All right, next up here we have the idea of what we do with our 6 trig functions for a quadrantal angle. Remember that the major thing with x, y, and r is that r is always positive. Otherwise, we treat these exactly like we do one that doesn't end exactly on a quadrant. So for instance, 90 degrees. There is a 90-degree angle. Okay? We just need to name one point on the terminal side of that angle. It doesn't matter what point. So let's say we use the point 0, 2. That is a point that lies on that positive y-axis, so it is a point that is on the terminal side of that angle. Well, if that's your location, remember that x and y are those 2 points. X is 0 and y is 2. And then remember what r is. R is the distance that that point lies from the origin. Well, if x is 0, then y and r are the same value. R is also 2. So then we can go through and we can do our 6 trig functions for 90 degrees. Using that x, that y, and that r. Okay, keep in mind sine is y over r. Well, that's 2 over 2. That's 1. Cosine is x over r. That is 0 divided by 2, which is 0. Tangent is where we run into a problem because the tangent is y over x. And are we allowed to divide by 0? No, we're not. So this is undefined. Cosecant would be r over y, which again is 2 over 2, or 1. Secant is r over x, which runs into that same problem. We have 2 divided by 0, that is undefined. And cotangent is x over y, that is 0 divided by 2, which is 0. So it's really not a whole lot harder. The basic idea is for every quadrantal angle, 2 of the 6 values will be undefined. You're not allowed to divide by 0. So wherever the 0 is in the denominator, those 2 out of 6 will become the undefined values. And there will be still 6 answers. 1, 0, undefined, 1, undefined, and 0. That's still 6 different trig values, just 2 of them are not defined. So the same idea if we had 180 degrees. We just need to name a point on that terminal side. Say we use the point, I don't know, negative 3, 0 as our point. Well, x is negative 3, y is 0, and r is the distance that we lie from the origin to that point, which is 3 units. So r is positive 3. Remember, r is always positive. So then we go through and we say, okay, the sine of 180 degrees, which is y over r, would be 0 over 3, or 0. The cosine of 180 degrees is x over r, or negative 3 over 3, which is negative 1. Tangent is y over x, which is 0 divided by negative 3, which is 0. The cosecant is r over y, that's 3 divided by 0, which is undefined. The secant is r over x, which is 3 over negative 3, or negative 1. And the cotangent of 180 is x over y, which is negative 3 over 0 and is undefined. So again, 2 of the 6 are undefined. So that leads us to creating a reference item for quadrantal angles. We're going to create a chart that shows the values of the 4 quadrantal angles for any of our 6 trig functions. So we have 4 quadrantals angles. We have 0 degrees, which is also 360, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, and 270 degrees. For 0 degrees, sine is 0, cosine is 1, tangent is 0, cosecant is undefined, secant is 1, and cotangent is undefined. For 90 degrees, sine is 1, cosine is 0. Tangent is undefined. Cosecant is 1, secant is undefined, and cotangent is 0. We just did 180. That was 0 for sine, negative 1 for cosine, 0 for tangent, undefined for cosecant, negative 1 for secant, and undefined for cotangent. For 270 degrees, sine is negative 1, cosine is 0, tangent is undefined, cosecant is negative 1, secant is undefined, and cotangent is 0. Now this same reference item is found on page 25 in your textbook. Alright, so we're going to use that chart and we're going to answer some questions based on the values of quadrantal angles. So keep that chart handy. Use the trigonometric function values of quadrantal angles given in this section to evaluate each expression. So first one says cosine of 90 plus 3 cosine or sine 270. So we need to go to our chart and we need to look up those two values. So we go to our chart. Cosine of 90 degrees is 0. And the sine of 270 degrees is negative 1. That's 0 minus 3 or negative 3. It is that simple. Don't make it harder than that. Okay? So we're looking up secant of 180 and squaring that value. So secant of 180 is negative 1 squared minus 3 times the sine of 360 squared. Sine of 360 is 0 squared plus the cosine of 180, which is negative 1. So that would be 1 minus 0 minus 1, or 0. Finally, sine squared of negative 90 degrees. We need to keep in mind that negative 90 degrees, we might have to deal with a coterminal here. Okay, negative 90 degrees, we need to add a rotation to that to make it fit between 0 and 90. So we add 360 there. Same problem over here, except it's too big. We're going to subtract 360. So this becomes sine squared of 270 degrees plus cosine squared of 270 degrees. So that would be the sine of 270 degrees is negative 1 squared plus the cosine of 270 degrees, which is 0 squared. That would be 1 plus 0, or 1. All right, that does it for the second video in the series. I believe there will be 2 more. Nope, there's only 1 more. There's 1 more in this section.